everyone to this week's session or edition of Salesforce Security Office Hours. And we have the wonderful Crystal Ju with us and speaking today about how do you architect trust into a Salesforce org before it is too late. A very important topic, especially with everything that's been going on lately and for the past year in the Salesforce ecosystem. So we're just going through a few housekeeping rules, housekeeping items before kick off to the session. Just talking a little bit about rules of engagement, get some introductions in, a recap, and my favorite, which is hot off the press, we'll be talking about some interesting things, announcements Salesforce had recently. Then we'll get to the topic. So first off, I'd just like to say, so every time, especially for the newbies there, what is Salesforce Security Office Hours? It really was something I decided to start just because the problem I recognized was too many organizations are losing sensitive data, and especially after everything that happened in 2025. And many of them would have been preventable. And I also saw that there's so many people in the Salesforce ecosystem who are just not aware enough about Salesforce security or security in general, and also didn't have an avenue or anywhere to go easily to get access to professionals. So I wanted to create a format where every 2 weeks we could get professionals in that are experts on Salesforce security and to help educate the ecosystem and give an avenue where people can talk and ask questions directly to these experts that many people don't have access to on a regular basis. So at least every couple of weeks, you have someone you can go to ask those important questions. So that's why we encourage open engagement here. So rules of engagement, just be respectful to others. If they said it's open engagement, we want you to ask questions, raise your hand to ask questions, ask it in the Q&A. After the session's over, we'll have an open forum where you can ask anything you want on open mic. And the most important thing here is walk away, take notes, and walk away with something you can implement today, something that's actionable. Just don't listen and go away and then continue with your day, because the reason we're doing this is help you make changes, help everyone make changes that will impact the whole ecosystem as a whole and keep everyone's data safer. So who am I? My name is Matt Meyers. I am the CEO and founder of EzProtect and a certified technical architect with 19 plus years experience in ecosystem. Anybody that knows me sees me walking around here with Cody all the time and holding my book here that is a bestseller on Amazon that's Securing Salesforce Digital Experiences, my life, day in the life of how I lived through an actual data breach, which got me started on this path. So anyway, that's a little bit about me, and I'm gonna give Crystal the mic here really quick if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Matt. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, wherever you are. I'm Crystal Zhu, an enterprise architect and senior Salesforce technical architect. I'm delighted to be here co-presenting today's session with Matt. Trust is actually number one value and foundation of Salesforce platform. This topic is very close to my heart. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my insights with you. So when Tristan is contact me, actually I very happy to have this opportunity. So I'm glad to be here. A little about my background. I have spent over a decade working in the Salesforce ecosystem and hold 30 certifications, including system architect and application architect. My areas of expertise are integration and security. I'm also Salesforce community group leader, deeply invested in helping trailblazers like you level up their skills. I hold PMP and precise certifications as well, which remind me the security as much as a people and the process challenge as a technical one. So I have studied large language model agents at UC Berkeley. So when we talk about architecting trust, I'm also thinking about how AI agents interact with your org's security model. That's my brief introduction. Over to you, Matt.
Thanks a bunch, Crystal. Appreciate it. All right. Just something I always want to mention this. The office hours is supported by EzProtect. So if you're not aware, Salesforce Recently, well, Salesforce doesn't effectively scan your files for viruses uploaded to Salesforce, so that's why EzProtect was developed was to help protect you from viruses or other threats in files and URLs in Salesforce. So if you ever see a need where you want to protect your files or URLs from malicious content, please feel free to reach out to us, or if you want, you can take our risk-free security assessment. All right, so moving on, always like to do a recap of the last office hours. This was a really good one where we were talking with Lily about how to secure your Experience Cloud sites. And of course, this is very dear and near to my heart because that's exactly what happened in my book here was we had a misconfigured digital experience site which allowed more than 5,000 records of PII to be exposed. And so that's, was super exciting to me to hear her talk about that. So if you're really interested to understand a little bit more things that you could be doing to secure your digital experiences, click on that QR code there, and you'll be able to watch that session with Lily. All right, so my favorite next thing of every week is hot off the press. This one is really interesting. As I said earlier, not surprising to me, but MFA enforcement was canceled. Well, not canceled, paused. And if you are not aware, Salesforce was about to roll out more stricter MFA, where not only was MFA required, but MFA elevated MFA or phishing resistant MFA, as they were calling it, would be required for anyone with sysadmin type privileges. But what that meant is even if you had normal MFA for your admin users would be required to upgrade to phishing resistant MFA. And if they didn't, you wouldn't be able to access your Salesforce environment. The problem was what they found is they had a bug that was, or a defect that was in their phishing resistant MFA, so they had to push it down the line a little bit. But that is coming, as you can see here. Sandboxes will resume or have already resumed as of January 6th, and production will resume on the 20th. It doesn't mean that's the date you're going to be migrated over, but that means sometime on that day or after you will be migrated over. So it's really important to make sure that you're ready for that. And if you have any questions about that, happy to offer some advice. Feel free to DM me if you want, or anyone, or I'm sure Crystal happy to help you out a little bit too if you DM her. All right. The other one is permissions and profiles retirement was canceled. So if you weren't aware, Salesforce was going to retire all the permissioning in Salesforce profiles, or at least majority of it, so that everything would have to be done on permission sets and permission set groups. But they found that there was not a lot of pushback in the community. There wasn't a complete parity in the permission sets and the profiles versus permission set groups. So that retirement has been canceled for now, and we'll see in the future if later that they bring that back or not. This metric on the bottom is very alarming to me too, that only 20.5% of organizations today have fully transitioned to a permission set led security model, meaning about, what is that, 79.5% of organizations are still highly dependent on profiles, which is a very, very not secure way of handling your security, which we have some other office hours. We have gone into some of those in the past. So, but definitely something interesting there. Okay, so now we'll go and transition to Crystal's session here. So how do you architect trust into Salesforce work before it is too late? So Crystal, I'll give the mic over to you. Just let me know when you want me to advance your slides.
Sure. Thank you, Matt. I want to give some context here why this happening, why I prepared this sort of presentation. So last year, I had the opportunity to help clients in reviewing and auditing their Salesforce org. During this work, I identified some common gaps in integration and security design that many orgs have. So today, I want to share these real-world insights with you. So too often security conversation happen is after something goes wrong, after a breach, after compliance audit findings, after a regulator sends a letter. But today we're going to flipping that script. we're going to talk about how you build trust into your Salesforce architecture from the very beginning through the framework, design patterns, and concrete configuration choice. So I'm hoping by the end of the session, you have a clear mental model, real world patterns, and audit checklists you can take back to your org today. So before actually we talk about how to architect trust, let's talk about why it matters. According to the DLA Piper GDPR fines and data breach survey from January 2026, GDPR fines since 2018 have now reached 7.1 billion euro. In 2025 alone, then is 1.5 billion fines were issued. These are not rounding errors. They are financial events for any organization. Reported breach has risen by around 25%, average 443 per day. So that means statistically, while we're talking this conversation, dozens of organizations around the world are discovering they have been compromised. I think Mac probably agree with my point right now. And the financial damage does not stop at the regulatory fines. Reputational damage drives customer churn, erodes brand trust, and can take years to recover from. For smaller organizations, a single breach can be difference between staying in business or closing the doors. This is why trust isn't a feature you add at the end, it's a foundation. Let's talk about that, how to build it. Would you mind just the next
Yep,
slide?
most definitely. And I just wanted to add a couple small things here. So there's one metric that we actually have on our website, I believe, still for small businesses, is that after a single breach, I think 60% of small businesses will go out of business in 6 months after a single breach. And so if you imagine as a small business, your customer's data is breached, and if you are selling, your customers are large or mid-sized companies, that they're going to have a very high amounts of breaches. Your insurance will not cover that breach, even if you have a lot of insurance, which most small businesses do not hold. So that's the first thing about that. The second thing I wanted to mention also is, Crystal, you really hit on was what people don't think about is the customer loss itself, right? It's people think about the fines, but then what happens if you're a large enterprise, you're a billion-dollar company and you lose 10% of your customers, even 5% of your customers. You're talking millions and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. And then how much does it cost you to get those customers back? But then even after you got those customers back, you're now having to fix your brand. And so you're talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars just to fix a single breach. So I'll continue, just some interesting food for thought there.
Okay, thank you, Matt. So this slide is actually our guiding framework today is Salesforce well-architected framework. So the framework has 3 pillars: trusted, easy, and adaptable. Today, we are focusing on the first pillar, trusted. What does trusted mean in this context? It actually breaks down into the 3 dimensions: secure. Your architecture controls access and protects data. Compliant, you respect regulatory and ethical guardrails, whether that's GDPR, HIPAA, or your own internal governance policies. And reliable, your solution earns trust through availability, predictability, and ability to scale without breaking. Okay, so trust is number 1 value and the foundation of Salesforce platform. Then is before you optimize for ease of use or adaptability, get trust foundation right. Everything else is built on top of it. So I really love this opportunity because Matt set up, this stage for us to share insights and talk about how important this security important than the trust built on top of that, right? So throughout the rest of session, we'll use this framework as our lens of every design decision. Next, please. Okay, so from this slides, I want to clarify a common misconception right away. Security architecture is not about maximum restriction. It's about balance. Think of it as a three-word model. Your system needs to be protected, controlled, and monitored. All three at the same time. Not just protected, not just controlled. The goal is to make your system and data accessible to the right users at the right time for the right purpose, full stop. If you drift too far in one direction, extremely restriction, your users cannot do their jobs, right? Then they create workarounds and your security model breaks down anyway. If you drift to the other way, complete openness, you've left the front door unlocked. The right balance is what we're architecting toward. And in practice, that means thinking carefully about each layer of your security model, which is exactly what we're going to do next. Next slide. Thank you. So every trust decision in Salesforce fall into one of these three layers. The first layer is organizational security. That's about authentication versus authorization. Who is this user? Who are they allowed to do? And critically, are they on the right license for their use case? Using a Salesforce full license for integration user is the most common over provisioning mistake I see in enterprise orgs. The second layer is session security. This covers session management, device access controls, and threat detection. It's about how you associate a request with a verified identity and how you respond when something looks wrong. The third layer, data security, sharing and visibility through the permission set groups, org-wide defaults, and sharing rules, plus encryption for sensitive data. Very importantly, never store credentials in customer metadata type, customer settings, or hard-coded in your code. Here is a concerning data point from 2026. TILA's data threat report. Only around 34% of organizations have complete knowledge of where all their data is stored. You cannot protect what you cannot see. You cannot scope access to what you cannot map. So building a trust org starts with data visibility before you configure a single permission. Know your data landscape. May we move to next one?
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure
Do you
thing.
want anything to add?
One other interesting metric I learned too from Elements Cloud was they had done a security study that I helped them with a little bit, and where they looked at all the profiles within all the orgs or all their customers, and they found, I think it was they tried to strip out anyone that was a sysadmin. So anything like system administrator profile types, anything with sysadmin or similar type of words in the names, and they still found there were at least 20 users per org that had some level of sysadmin data permissions, such as view all data, modify all data, for individual objects or for the entirety of the org, even though they weren't a sysadmin profile, which is very scary considering how many orgs out there that have, or it's basically showing the amount of over permissioning that's going on in the orgs today. So very, very alarming.
100% true, Matt. Is 100% true.
Yep. Yep. It's very
Oh,
scary.
so this slides actually talk about in Salesforce, zero trust translates into the concrete practice, right? So the first, select a license aligned to intended use case. Do not give an integration user a full Salesforce license. Use the integration user license. The platform enforces least privilege for you by design when you use the right license. The second, architect your security model around the persona, not the individual. That makes your model scalable, auditable, and easy to maintain. Third, design your data model with access control in mind. The choice between master detail and the lookup relationship isn't just a UI decision. It affects how Salesforce cascades permissions and sharing. Make that choice intentionally. The fourth is secure your integration. Audit every single connected app or external client app, because moving forward will be external client app. Centralize authentication using name credential and external credentials, and use without sharing in Apex, only intentionally with documentation. According to 2026 TLS data threat point, about 52% organizations now rank identity and access management as their most pressing security discipline. Matt, you can add more on this for this one.
I am good.
Okay, so let's move. So this slide actually captured the most important configuration practice for integration security. Then I want to remember it. One integration, one identity, one scope set integrations. Each integration in your org should have its own dedicated user, not a shared integration account, not the admin account repurposed. A dedicated user on Salesforce integration user license, use minimum access API only integration profile. That profile gave you the starting point of 0, no permissions, no access. So you then build up use permission sets, ground all in and exactly what that integration needs to do its job. Why does this matter? Because when you share an integration use across multiple integrations, you lose accountability. You cannot tell which integration touch which record, and you are almost certainly running with far more access than any single integration actually needs. One integration, one identity is not complicated, but it requires intentional architecture from the start. Next, please. Okay, let's talk about this minimum access API only integration profile. This profile has been the Salesforce standard since Spring 24. It was built with one philosophy in mind. Start with zero. Zero permissions, zero object access, zero trust assumed. From login perspective, it's API access only. Your integration user cannot log into Salesforce through a browser. That's intentional. And it's a security feature, not a limitation. Remember that. Regarding object access, none by default, and that's exactly the point. You build up permissions intentionally by assigning only the permission sets your integration actually needs, nothing more, nothing less. Think of it as a zero trust architecture. Instead of stripping permission from an over-provisioned profile, you start from nothing and add only what's necessary. That keeps your integration footprint tight and auditable. So in you see the enforcement. One point is now the enforcement notes you see on the slide is important. There is an upcoming winter 27 enforcement for update instance URLs release update. Integration user and the client app that's still called instance-based endpoint. That URL must be migrated to your org my domain login. So at Matt, you can add more on top of this. Thank you.
So, I mean, I have one question for you. So, originally, what you're talking about here for organizations is limiting that blast radius, right? Is that correct, Crystal?
Sorry, could you
I
repeat
was
your question?
saying, so what you're talking about here is really limiting that blast radius for when a data breach, if a data breach happens. So instead of giving
Exactly.
access to
Exactly.
everyone, right? Yeah, it's a lot less and less. And I think the same premise should be for all your users, because a lot of customers I know give like public read write to all their internal users, to all the objects, even though they don't need it. It's not that you don't trust those users. You want to limit that blast radius, right? As much as you
That's
can.
correct. So this not only apply to the integration, also internal users. So it's job to be done. What they really need permission. They don't need to view all data or modify all data. You don't need to give them. Then they only need account contact. They don't need other work orders or other objects access. So that's really critical because that's also the data breach. Because if actually is, I don't know, is bad actor may happen, right? Matt, agree with
Mhm.
me? So
Yep.
that's the things actually is applied to both sides, right? Integration user and the internal users.
Yeah, I think I like to, I mean, tell people when you're, creating your profiles and your permission sets and everything, think of if this, how bad would it be if this user with this profile or this permission set got breached? Because it's actually a very valid question because it happens all the time. And so, understanding what is your exposure for any one user or profile is really important.
That's exactly. So I heard some true story. So, is, salesperson is download bunch of leads, bring with them. So
Hmm.
that also is one thing is actually you need to pay attention to. So you trust them. Yes, you trust them. But the other hand, you also need to protect your organization asset. In my viewpoint, probably
Yep.
that's still valid.
Yep. Correct. Exactly.
Okay. All right. Let's bring everything we covered to life with a real world scenario. So you have just joined Sentosa Health, a fictional company, as a Salesforce technical architect. First day, first assignment, you are handed an existing health cloud and asked to do a security review. Your mission? Identify the gaps and recommend improvements, all guided by Salesforce Well Architect framework. Then let's walk through it. Next slide. Yes. So so here is the current state. So take a close look at this architecture. This health cloud org has 6 integration points, 5 inbound, 1 outbound, handling from patient accounts to provider schedules. There is one single integration user responsible for all 5 inbound integrations. That user is running our Salesforce user license with a profile cloned directly from system administrator. And for the outbound integration, authentication credentials, endpoint, username, password are stored in a customer metadata type. Put yourself in architecture. What are the risks? What are the anti-patterns? How do you ensure this architecture align with the Well Architect framework? I give you a couple minutes if time allows. Matt, do you agree? So we just think through what actually the issue, what the risks, what are the anti-patterns for everyone here.
Yep. Are you looking for audience participation on this?
No, it's take a close look first before
Okay.
I move on. Just
Okay.
we can actually discuss in next slides.
If anyone wants to throw
Yeah,
your
the
own
talk. Yeah, go ahead.
feedback in, happy to, if you want to just talk or if you want to just post in chat, just to have a little bit sidebar here about the slide, that'd be excellent as well. I'm sure some interesting perspectives here.
Yeah,
And then we'll move on in about a minute or less.
yeah. So maybe we're good.
I
Matt,
can
move to
give
next
you,
one.
oh, while we're waiting for people on this slide, I think, I see a few, but I don't want to pull the,
Yeah, yeah, you're expert, right, Matt?
yeah, I don't want to give away the answers though. So I
But
definitely
this
see
is so
several.
common in real life
Yeah.
because, I just want to talk through a little bit.
Yeah, I've seen, I mean, some of the things that I do see on here, I definitely see in real life. Even, the one I'll call out was I heard you say was the username password. It's amazing how many people still are using that username password for their integration flows after all these years. But anyway, I guess we can move on to the next slide now.
Sure. Okay, so here is identify three anti-patterns here. So number one is anti-pattern one user for all integrations. If you actually point out, then you are on the right track. So a shared identity means no accountability and traceability. And if those credentials are compromised, every integration is at risk. Every integration shared a combined access without granular permissions, also violating the principle of least privilege. Anti-pattern 2. Integration user assign a customer profile clone from system administrator. This profile grants override modify all data and view all data permissions, far exceeding the integration requirements and violating the principle of this privilege. Then anti-pattern 3, outbound integration credentials stored in customer metadata type. Storing credential in customer metadata type exposes them in plain text actually, right? Like hard coding them and making them accessible to anyone with metadata access. And honestly, these three anti-patterns are more common than you would think. I have seen them repeatedly in my reviews. Integration user running our Salesforce user license with system administrator profile. It works until it doesn't. When it fails big. The current architecture does not align with well-architected framework. As architects, we must identify these anti-patterns and propose a more secure, trusted solution.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a one of our earlier self security office hours. We had a speaker named Doug Camera on here, I believe. Is that right? But he was talking. He does security reviews or assessments in Australia, and he asked the question, "Do you know how many orgs that he reviews? What percentage have used a system administrator profile for their integration user?" And he said 100% of the ones he reviews have used sysadministration for at least one integration user, which, and also in that same number is how many are used shared integration user as well. And so that's really scary, showing that many orgs for someone who's doing this all the time is still seeing this in almost every org he is reviewing. So that's really scary. One other thing I wanted to call out here as well is, this, if we think about some of the data breaches that happened last year with like the SalesLoft and Gainsight, was that the provider got breached. Not and which means that if your provider gets breached, then that then that attacker has access to everything that user has access to. So maybe you feel like you can trust your provider, but again, this is that blast radius thing, that your provider, you may feel trustworthy, but you probably don't want to be giving your provider access to all the data, because if they get breached, then again, that attacker has access to all your data. And this is what happened to, I mean, I think it was 900 plus, and I think the number is even higher now, of organizations that were breached because of those breaches. And so that's what, again, what I'm thinking about is not, do you trust whoever's accessing it? It's what happens if this gets breached. So we can continue.
Great points. Thank you,
Yep.
Matt. Okay, so this one actually how to fix it, right? So let's review the patterns and advice to fix them. So advice for anti-pattern one, allocate a dedicated API only user to each integration. Each user has its own identity, which clear ownership and accountability, and the access scope exactly to the integration, right? So this approach keeps your integration footprint secure and auditable and enforce least privilege. So advice for anti-pattern two, start with integration user license. This comes with minimum access API only integration profile built on a zero trust philosophy, one license, one profile. Let the platform enforce this privilege for you by design. That's the power of choosing the right license from the start. Then assign the dedicated permission sets per integration scope strictly to the objects and the fields each integration requires, nothing more. This enforces this privilege and minimizes the risk of accidental or malicious bulk data change. Really important. The advice for anti-pattern 3, implement name credentials with external credentials to centralize and secure outbound authentication and enhancing security. These patterns enforce the principle of least privilege, improve traceability, and strengthen security. Next, please. Okay, so this is the future state. If actually you have all the points already, you are on the right track. It's a great job. So here is a future state architecture based on the advice we just talked about, how to fix it. The first, we allocate one dedicated integration user per integration. Each integration has its own identity. If something goes wrong, you know exactly where to look, right? Then second, each integration user is switched to the integration user license that comes with the minimum access API only integration profile. We have replaced an over provisioned profile with zero trust by design. Then we define the login IP range to restrict where the integration user can authenticate from. The third, each integration user gets a dedicated permission set, limited exactly to what that integration needs and nothing more. And finally, for the outbound integration, we implement name credentials with external credential to centralize and secure outbound authentication and enhance security. So each change here is directly aligned with well-architected framework and the principle of this privilege. This is what trust architecture looks like. Matt, add something more? Go ahead.
Yep. I mean, I do completely agree. And specifically also, I like the API, well, I'm sorry, the IP restrictions as well on top of that. So, because even if so we're talking about other breaches that happened in the past, that login IP ranges is one of the biggest things you can do to help restrict those types of access to your organizations. If you don't have that in place, it's pretty much open season for any attacker that gets access to those credentials. But also, like Crystal is saying here, is also reducing, segmenting out your integration users to different, the permission types and different personas. I think that's very important, not only for the security, but the manageability of it as well. If you don't, really hard to understand what kind of permissions are in the user that has sysadmin and what's that being used for. Also, if it's breached or you're trying to understand what happened in that user did, if five different companies or systems are using that same user, it's really hard to trace which system actually did it. So that's another reason that you want to split these out in addition to, of course, just the minimization of the risk across all these integrations. And Crystal, I don't know if you have anything else to add or not, but that's kind of just my 10 cents on this topic.
Great points, Matt. Thank you.
Hmm.
Next. Yeah. Okay, so here's a summary at a glance. So current state versus future state. So this table compares the current and future state, highlighting the key changes across user accountability, licenses, profile, and object and user level permissions to establish a secure trust architecture. So the future state approach fully embodies zero trust and the principle of least privilege. There is no longer any override, modify all data, and view all data access. Each integration user is granted exactly the access it needs, nothing more. For example, view event log file access is restricted to the Azure Sentinel integration user only. Yeah, so this is exactly we want. So Matt, you can add more for this. Thank you.
Right. I am good.
Okay.
Next slide.
So yeah, we're close to finish line in my presentation. So let's close with something you can take back, best practice for configuring integration users. A few key points to call out. One user per integration. So each integration has its own identity, its own accountability. Use the integration user license with API owning integration profile wherever possible. That's the least privilege enforced by design. Defined login IP range at profile level, lock down where your integration user can authenticate from. One critical step that's often overlooked, assign the Salesforce integration permission set license to your integration user before assigning any permission sets. Without that, permission sets cannot be assigned. And finally, test and test in sandbox first, always.
Yep, for sure. Do you know, just one throwing ad for everyone? So if people are looking to test their profiles and permission sets, do you have any best practices you could share with people on how they could do that?
So a couple of things is actually when you test in the sandbox, I feel for the each each integration user using the permission set is another design pattern is instead of using the permission set group. That's one actually uh the tip also is when you design this one. So each integration, I think probably you need to isolate one to test each integration first, then actually we test combine them all. So that's step by step. So isolate if something is not working well.
Yep. Yeah, I also like to do testing, more of offensive testing as well, I guess it's called, is where you try to script it and then you try to see what you can, what you shouldn't be doing, but see if you're able to do it, right? Instead of a lot of people are only doing positive testing for the most part of testing, what I can, what I know I should be doing, but they're not testing the things that they shouldn't be able to do. And the same thing when you're defining your personas, define your anti-personas, the personas of the people that shouldn't be accessing Salesforce, and not only the personas that should, right?
100% agree. So positive and negative. So that's also the one thing. Thank you, Matt. Yeah,
Yep, for sure, for sure. All right, you want to go to the next slide?
sure. Let's
All
go to
right.
next. Okay, so actually right now we're shifting from design pattern to evaluation. So this is your architect's audit, a set of questions you can use to access any Salesforce Salesforce orgs security posture in minutes. So start with authentication. So you can ask this bunch of questions. Are you user set up as an individual, meaning each human or system has their own user records or accounts being shared? Then move to the authorization, right? Are you access control design around the persona, job function, roles, team membership, rather than specific individuals? So this is the questions you can ask. Answer these questions. So your organizational secure layer if you can answer these questions confidently, your organizational security layer is good in shape. If you can't, probably you have just identify your priority list. Anything to add, Matt? Otherwise, we can move to next. Okay, so this is the question is continue to architect audit covering this session security and data security. How are inactive sessions handled? A session left open on an unattended device is an open door. What are your timeout policies? This is all related to the session security. For data security, then, for example, you can ask, is a generative AI, if you're using Einstein or Agentforce, operating with appropriate data grounding and guardrails? So these are kind of questions you can ask. So use this questionnaire to get your conversations, challenge existing designs, and ask the right questions when architecting a secure solution.
Yep.
So
And
anything?
agent port security is a whole different topic as well.
Yes, I 100% agree.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I'll just call out on that, and then I'll go to the next slide, is that think of your agents like humans. You wouldn't give a support user sysadmin privileges, so you shouldn't give your support agent sysadmin privileges. Yep.
Actually exactly the same. What's the job function, what they can do, what they cannot, right?
Yep.
Exactly treat exactly the same. Like if you have
Exactly.
agent designed, is treated as if internal user. So it's exactly what job function they need. Don't give more, nothing more.
Correct.
Okay, so finally, let's reflect. Let Salesforce Well Architect Framework be your guiding principle and your friend. Adopt a zero trust principle of this privileged mindset across every dimension of your architecture. 360 coverage, no blind spots. Use a questionnaire and a checklist on your next org review to keep yourself honest. And do not wait. Apply this best practice now. Protect your data, enhance your security, and uphold trust. So that's actually is the this the let's reflect that. So Matt, you can move to next if you're good with this.
Yep. Good. All right.
Thank you. So I will leave you with a thought I wrote for this session because it's captured everything we talk about today. Security is not a feature you add at the end. It's a foundation you architect from the start. You architect for trust. I believe this deeply. Every time I see a breach trace back to an over-privileged user, a hard-coded credential, or profile clone from system admin, it's a reminder these things do not happen because people don't care. They happen because security wasn't designed in from the beginning. Build trust, architect from start. So security is not a feature you add at the end. It's a foundation you architect from start. You architect for trust. This is the final takeaway for you. Thank you.
Yep, most definitely. And thank you, Crystal. I think this should be a new t-shirt, maybe a shirt for a shirt or something, because I think it's a very amazing quote. I love this. Thank you so much. All right, and another quote for us, my favorite quote that we always say is only you can prevent and contain data breach in Salesforce. And by Cody himself. But although I mean maybe we should replace it with Crystal's quote because I think that it rings just as good as well as this one. So anyway, so join us for next time for our next sessions that are coming up. We're going to have Tom Bassett back again, and then also we'll have Durant Walters as well. That's been coming up as well. So bookmark those if you want to join the upcoming one next sessions. And then last but not least, we always have our resources like to share. If you want to get a copy of this book here, all proceeds go to nonprofits. You can get that. You can also some more resources of our office hour videos as well on YouTube. So we'll go ahead and open up the floor now for any questions that anyone has, and we can answer some of the Q&A. And I'm going to stop the share for right now. So if anyone that, feel free to go to mic, but also if there's any open questions, we can go and answer those. So let me see here. We do have a couple here. from Sean. Here, I'll just read it aloud. He said he couldn't agree more with the least privilege approach. Very well written and said. We have an org at our company that is getting very close to the Salesforce cap. Oh my gosh, of 1,000 custom permission sets. It is an 8K user org with many personas. There are org caps. The org caps that apply to the orgs of all shapes and sizes are sometimes annoying. Curious if anyone knows or have heard if Salesforce would ever increase that 1K permission set limit via exception, purchase, or whatever. We've heard that is a hard limit that cannot be changed, but thought this was good to ask. I mean, that's interesting. I think, I actually wasn't aware of that limit. Were you aware, Crystal, of the limit, the hard cap? Oh,
I'm not
you're on.
100% sure the hard cap. Sorry, I'm just aware this is just one more thing. It's not the office hours because this week also is our stampede. So I just, wear this hat today.
Yeah, but Sean, I mean, I've not heard of that myself, but I mean, I think it's very, I think if there's that, the question is, I mean, I could see how you could have a lot of permissions. The other thing I would talk about is maintainability of that. Would you, as a admin, understand what permissions are available in your org when you're assigning this permission set? So I think, again, there's a balance. I don't think I could tell you for sure if the 1,000, hitting that 1,000 is good or bad for your organization. But I mean, just from my personal side, I would have a concern over how would I mean the maintainability of that itself. And maybe there's some overlap. Maybe there's some areas that you can cut down. Maybe there isn't. So, I mean, I think that to answer your question, I'd reach out to Salesforce itself if you haven't already. But I think that's the best answer. I don't know if anyone else on here, Rachel
May
or Jesse or others, that have maybe no also answer to that, but I don't know. So.
I think is Matt is no limit. I don't know is a hard limit, but I think it's hard to maintain. I think good things you should review everything, consolidate what you really need, because I feel is a lot of system admin is not really review what exists, then they keep adding more. So I think that's also not best practice. So
Hmm.
probably take some time is just review all the profiles. If you can consolidate, you consolidate. If not, you how to actually minimize that number, cut down. It's hard to maintain exactly.
Yep, exactly. So, um, and then I know Rachel, you put a comment here for a true system administrator. Do you recommend assigning them the standard sysadmin profile or creating a custom one cloned from this for more flexibility? I think you already know the answer, but it's a good prompt. You want to answer that one, Crystal, or?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. So system mean you can clone from the original one. But another thing is if Salesforce need to, new added or new feature, but the only will actually affect original Salesforce admin, but not yours. So at the same time, probably you need to sync sometimes. So that's also need to maintain, in my opinion.
Yeah,
You can,
I personally don't use the standard sysadmin profile myself. I like to clone it because from the aspect that, the new stuff, they could have new stuff, so they could be updating and changing that sysadmin profile over time. And just like you said, you don't know what gets added or not added
yeah,
to it versus controlling what gets added. The downside is there might be some features in the future the sysadmin doesn't have access to, but maybe that's not a bad thing, and then you just then you learn about them, you can add those features, but it's more about, I think, having that control rather than just relying on what Salesforce is adding and removing. Also, there's some features settings you cannot change. I know if you're using the standard sysadmin profile itself, there's some features you cannot change in the profile, and you just have to be set with it. So that's why cloning has always really been the best practice, I think, just generally in the ecosystem. So as far as that goes. So, and I know we're out of time. I already see some people dropping, but we're happy to stay on if anyone has any other questions. I know we only have six people left. Rachel, I don't know if that was your your as well, what you agree with my assessment of that, or if you have other comments.
No, I agree, Matt. I've just seen it done both ways, but
Yeah.
wanted to hear from the expert. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So, okay, great. Does anyone have anything else you want to ask before we wrap up here? I know we are at time. Open
Rachel, thanks
floor.
for joining.
Yes.
Thanks, Crystal. Thanks for the session.
Thank you.
Yep. Yes. Thank you, Crystal. So much. Thank you so much for the session. So I guess since no one else is speaking up or putting anything else in, we can go ahead and close things out. But again, thank you so much, Crystal, and everyone else. If you ever have any other questions in between, you feel free to DM me, DM, all the experts out there. I'm sure everyone's always happy to help in the community. But until then, we'll see you on the next session of Office Hours. Thanks. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for having me. Thank you, Matt
Everyone.
and
Bye.
Tristan.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.